Nick Ashew here with the DMV.
Has concluded.
The DMVSTREAM.COM player.
Sean Parker along with Nick Allison.
I always wanted to play volleyball in college.
Cordova trying to dig it out of the board. And they score!
Hello and welcome to the Prep Zone. I'm your host, Matt President. A super busy day here. It's signing day. And Nick Eilerson and Brenton Randolph kind enough to join me on this much anticipated episode. Nick, all day long you were around the region and saw some pretty big names make their choices to go to the next level.
Man, Matt, I'm pretty signing date out, to be honest with you. It was a long day. Got up at 5:45 and went out to Good Counsel High. Saw some, they had 10 commits over there. Ended up at Riverdale Baptist for a crazy ceremony with Tariq Castro Fields. So it was basically just finished up. Yeah, it was a great day.
We'll get to all of that. Hopefully you have a little bit left in the tank for us here.
Definitely.
Brenton, you're revved up. You're all good to go?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, well, let's take a look at what's coming up on the show today. Of course, National Signing Day, a lot to get to there, but then following that, we have a couple recaps and previews to get to per usual. St. Stephen's, St. Agnes, and Episcopal from last night. Also, Paul VI and DeMatha from a night ago. Our previews coming your way. Rock Creek Christian, they've climbed the charts in the Washington Post Top 20. Riverdale Baptist goes at it with them, and Battlefield Osborne. So you see the show a little different today, but rightfully so. A lot to get to on National Signing Day, and here's how you can check us out on Facebook Live, on demand, DMV Stream, and on local TV as well. But before we get into the meat of the show, BJ Kubarulis is going to tell you how to get your plays featured on our Top 10 Countdown.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an all-new season of Top Plays here at AllMetSports.com and WashingtonPost.com. I'm BJ Kubarulis. All right, like the previous 3 seasons, we're continuing our exciting interactive high school basketball show, a show that allows you, parents, coaches, players, and fans, to send in your video submissions for ranking in our Top 10 style weekly show. Each week, we'll reveal the latest highlights, dunks, sweet assists, and bizarre happenings from across the region. All you gotta do is tweet me the link. I'm at BJ Koob, and remember, you gotta hashtag it AllMets. You can send in your Huddle, YouTube, Vimeo, really any video link, and we'll consider it for use in the upcoming episode of Top Plays. Remember to tune in every Monday to see if your video made it at AllMetSports.com. We'll see you soon.
All right, so National Signing Day, the end of when players have to make their decision. Some guys do it early, get it out of the way with. Some guys take their time. Some guys make a video, a dramatic, decision. Other guys pull a hat from the table. Now, one guy, the last guy you talked to today, Tariq Castro Fields, he really waited till the last moment possible.
Yeah, he really did. He pulled that last stunt that you mentioned. Tariq was a highly touted cornerback from Riverdale Baptist, a 4-star recruit. Everyone knew the decision was down to Maryland or Penn State. And as the moment came, he got up there, made his 30-second speech pretty much in one breath. You could tell he was extremely nervous, but we didn't know how nervous he really was at the time, because then he reached under the table to grab a hat, stumbled for a half second, and everyone thought he was just acting to be dramatic. And he pulled out a Penn State hat, and everyone went crazy. But then I talked to him afterwards and found out that he said to me, I literally did not decide my school until 5 seconds before I grabbed that hat. So as he was making that speech to the whole auditorium, hundreds of people watching on TV, in the gym, he himself did not know if he was going to pick Maryland or Penn State. And he went with a complete gut decision.
Well, sometimes you got to trust your gut, but really, just what a crazy story. And Nick, you got the inside scoop there.
But that's just how kids do it. I mean, think back to when you were in college. When you were in that age, did you know when you were picking your school, did you know what college you really wanted to go to? At the end of the day, it's a gut decision. That's what every kid tells you, is that I just had to go with my gut. So whether it be a day before or a second before, it's really the same thing at the end of the day for a high school kid. Just going with their gut.
It is. Well, congrats to Tariq and all different kids from around the region making these really big decisions. So we're going to shout out a bunch of them as we go through this show from all around the region. Of course, you started your day, Nick, at Good Counsel, and they had a handful of guys. You see ACC, Big Ten, SEC all represented.
Yeah, nice and diverse set there. They got a couple Kentucky guys, had a dozen family members for Nasir Watkins and Joshua Pascal. So a lot of Kentucky blue there.
And then you have several guys from the Potomac School, Daquan Jones. is one you see there. A lot of support. Jaden Riley, also from Potomac, signing his letter in that picture. So keep tweeting us, and we'll find you. Hopefully, reach out on Twitter. Chris Thornton, Daniel Adu, West Springfield. So many guys. This region's such a hotbed for talent, Brendan.
Yeah, and I mean, I got a chance to see Daniel Adu play in a game against West Potomac, and even though West Springfield lost that game 47-40, it was a definite shootout sort of a game, and West Springfield's offense was absolutely incredible in that one, and the big reason for that was their wide receiver, Daniel Adu. I mean, he had at least a couple of touchdowns in that one. If I'm right about it, he might have had a touchdown on the first play of the game. So he's definitely somebody that's extremely explosive, and they're definitely going to be getting an incredible player in Daniel Adu.
So as we move along, more shout-outs to get to. A few more at least. Yeah, Hokie avatar Devontae Smith making his decision.
Hokie high, man. You love it.
And then Latez Rogers, he's choosing Maryland. A bunch of guys staying local. We'll get to that a little later in the show as we move along. But let's start with DeMatha right here. Several big-name guys highlighted by five-star recruit Chase Young, who chooses Ohio State.
That's right. Chase Young, he's a guy, there was no surprise going into this one. He's known he's wanted to go to Ohio State since last July. He basically committed there on his first visit. So this is a guy who's one of the most dominant defensive players in the area. He was our All-Met Defensive Player of the Year, 6'4", 255 pounds, unstoppable when he's going after the quarterback. So Ohio State getting a good one. Urban Meyer knows how to recruit him. He's probably the best recruiter in the country, so no surprise there.
You got a couple big-time recruiters in that conference, Urban Meyer, Jim Harbaugh, and DJ Durkin starting to climb the ladder there at Maryland. He gets a couple of DeMatha guys as well. Anthony McFarland, a running back, and he'll be running behind his old offensive lineman at DeMatha, Marcus Minor.
And there's another cool commitment story from Anthony McFarland, the running back from DeMatha. Took us through quite the adventure when he was announcing his commitment last Friday. He streamed it all live through Bleacher Report on Snapchat. And basically started off at a metro stop, took him to Reagan Airport. He's doing snaps the entire time. Everyone's like, okay, when are you going to decide? He's trying to decide between Miami and a couple other schools seemingly. But he gets to the airport, gets on a flight, and finally he fools everyone and shows a picture of him back at College Park petting the turtle. So he's like, I'm going to Maryland, guys. So big surprise there. Maryland got a good one, Anthony McFarland.
So was he on a plane?
Yeah. He took a flight, I think he was going down to Miami? I'm not sure. Well, he went to Miami previously.
So these are old pictures. Is that what we think?
No, he was doing
because DeMatha is a mile down the road from College Park, so he certainly didn't take the direct route.
That's what I'm saying. Like the pictures from College Park were old, or he'd filmed that over the weekend, so he snuck those in at the end. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how he did it.
Creative way of getting it done. And that seems to be the new trend here. Cardarian Richardson, also a Maryland running back commit, filmed a crazy video himself actually committing in outer space. In talking to some of these players, what is this new trend of these epic videos in their commitments?
Yeah, it just falls in the line of the way social media is going. The more apps you get, the more outlets you get in these kind of ways. I mean, it's just kids are taking advantage of their creativity. They want the attention. And to get attention, you have to pull these stunts that are more and more adventurous. And it's escalating very quickly. They're starting to fly to places and produce snap stories that are in other places. I don't even understand how it's working anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this might seem a little bit extreme, but I mean, it might be fair to say that this might have all started with LeBron James making the decision in 2010 and just having all these people around and like basically building up the hype for your decision, you know, long before you make it. So it's definitely one of those things where those guys probably look up to somebody like LeBron James and they just want to, you know, make sure they get as much hype as possible for themselves. Because, you know, even at this age, when you're a really good high school player, you become a brand. Like, some of these players have blue check marks on their Twitter accounts already at, like, 18. I've only got, like, 100 and something followers. So it's pretty crazy, like, what these guys are, you know, having to deal with even at such a young age. So it's definitely an interesting thing to see how creative they can get with it.
And it's a challenge for coaches as well to have this amount of social media, this amount of access for these players. And you bring up LeBron, okay, he's a superstar in the NBA. These guys are unproven going into college. It's a much different setting. And so it's another challenge to kind of settle it down. As we go through some more of these shout-outs, a lot of players to get to. Christian Greaves heading to Towson from Einstein. And then we got Zach Jewell out of Westfield. He's committing to Georgetown. So we'll have his games here on DMV Stream next season. Ivory Frimpong from Westfield also heading to Rhode Island. A lot of guys from the area. Brian Delaney, his teammate, off to UVA.
Man, I never thought I had seen like punting be cool until I saw Brian Delaney rocking that mullet on the regular season. I mean, that guy, he's got the strongest leg I've ever seen.
That's the mullet, though. He lost his mojo. Look at him. It's not the same.
Not the same to you?
Not the same. He probably lost 20 yards of distance without that hair.
When you talk about that brand, and it doesn't leave punters out. I mean, mullet here, Marquette King in the NFL. I mean, they're starting to get some
Even the punters getting some
right?
swag now, you know? Just, I mean, they're football players too. That's all I got to say about it, you know?
All right, we'll be right back with some more recruits, as you see Owen right there. But first, we're going to step aside, and David Houston of West Potomac is going to be our guest on this week's edition of the Coach's Corner.
Hey everybody, Brendan Randolph here, and in this week's version of the Coach's Corner, West Potomac coach David Houston draws up a play that the Wolverines like to run 8 times in a quarter.
All right, this is one of our sets that we really think and we have a lot of fun with, and we think we can score a lot. So we have the one man that's going to pass to the 2-man, then the 2-man is going to dribble it and pass it over to the 3-man, and then the 3-man is going to dribble it and kind of dribble around these guys a lot. And while he's doing that, we're hoping that the 5-man can set a solid back screen on the 4. We're going to look for the lob. Lob's probably not going to be open because we got a lot of mumbled up stuff going on right here. But then the 3-man who has the ball, we want him to try to drive it as hard as he can right down to the baseline. Then the 2 is going to set a back screen for the 1 who's going to flare all the way out there. We hope we can get a hard skip pass all the way over here to the 2. And then the 2 might be able to throw the ball to the 4. If that happens, then we'll take the shot, and we're pretty good with that play. We run it probably about 8 to 9 times a quarter. It's been really successful for me over my 13 years. I think all the guys have it pretty much memorized, kind of the way that I just put it together. So, try not to steal it, but it's a pretty good play for us, West Potomac.
Welcome back to a jam-packed episode of Signing Day here on the Prep Zone, and it's time to get to some guys from St. John's because they certainly had a big class this year. Several guys were committing to Maryland, and that's kind of been the theme these last few years, guys staying local, Nick.
Yeah, it's all part of the movement. These players from the WCAC going to Maryland, really a coup for those guys. I mean, DJ Durkin is recruiting really, really well. He's put together the 16th ranked class in the country. It's turning a lot of heads around the country, really, this Maryland class coming in here. And DeMatha and St. John's are certainly a huge part of that. There's several players. You can see Kasim Hill, the quarterback from St. John's, transferred from the Gilman School into St. John's for his senior season, and he will go to Maryland. He's a longtime Maryland commit. Cam Spence has also been committed to Maryland for a long time. I believe he committed there the day after Kasim did. But then when Maryland defensive coordinator Mike London got the job for Howard last month, he reconsidered his options and took an official visit to Florida. So Maryland fans got really nervous about Cam Spence. But he followed through today and committed to the Terps.
You talk about some uncertainty last minute. There were rumors going around that Calvin Ashley might be going to Maryland, flipping from Auburn. He stays with Auburn.
Yeah.
What more do you know?
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you're around all your teammates, like Kasim Hill, like Cam Spence, are going to Maryland. They're in your ear every day in school. They're like, hey man, you got to come with us. This kid, Calvin Ashley, has been committed to Auburn for over a year, and he's hearing this every day. He's starting to get into his head. So I don't think he was ever really going to change his mind, but that can be influential when your best buddies are saying, hey, come down the road to College Park and let's start dominating locally. So yeah, it's good for Maryland, good for Auburn that big 6'7" offensive lineman Calvin Ashley stuck to his guns.
6'7", 330. No slouch there on the line. Tyree Johnson, another lineman from St. John's, chooses A&M. Brenton, of this group of St. John's guys, who impresses you the most?
Well, probably the guy that I know the most about was quarterback Kasim Hill that we mentioned earlier. He basically had St. John's within minutes of stealing away a WCAC championship from Powerhouse DeMatha, and that would have been their first in a very long time. They came up just a little bit short, but you take a look at some of those stats there, 65% completion percentage, which is really good even in high school. And I would say that Maryland is getting an incredible group of players. Like Nick said, what, 16th overall?
Yeah.
And I mean, they're getting a bunch of guys from both DeMatha and St. John's, and really just everybody in the DMV area. So they're really dominating recruiting here.
Yeah, DJ Durkin compiling the highest ranked recruiting class in school history. So you see that Big Ten move slowly but surely taking effect. Now, we would be remiss if we didn't get to some guys who didn't go to DeMatha or go to St. John's. As you see here, Garrison Burnett choosing UConn. So many guys from this region. I really can't emphasize enough how big football is here in the DMV. Ben Maff, he's headed to the Richmond Spiders. Really cool mascot.
Oh yeah,
I have to say.
Definitely. 804 shout out, baby.
VCU, baby. I got to throw that in.
Oh man, Jack McDaniels, Christian Mazie. I mean, so many guys in so many different schools represented here. UVA again, Tyreek Pitts, and then Kobe Davis from Murray, also going to the next level.
Yeah, I got a chance to see both Kobe Davis and Garrison Burnett from Murray, and they went undefeated this season. It was their first undefeated season in a very long time, and they were just an incredibly fun group to watch. Like, Garrison Burnett was absolutely amazing. Like, he was obviously the best player on the field whenever he took the field, and it's just really cool to see all these guys that you see playing in high school get the chance to take it all the way up to the next level, and in some cases going D1, so it's just awesome.
Not only D1, but some of the best programs around. We've mentioned Auburn, Ohio State, Maryland climbing the ranks, and how about Luigi Villain going to play for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan?
This is part of that Big Ten coup, really. I mean, you see schools like Michigan, Maryland, we got Ohio State, Penn State. The Big Ten is doing really well in this region, and Luigi Villain is an excellent pickup for Jim Harbaugh. Really fearsome guy from Episcopal, can really fly on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I had the privilege of calling him this year when Episcopal played Woodbury Forest, and what he was able to do is just line up on different spots, both on the left side and the right side, really get after it on the blitz, and also really jump up and knock down passes. Mike Niebrick, who was on the call with me, thought he might play more linebacker in Jim Harbaugh's system, a little bit on the smaller side, so it'll be interesting.
I could totally see that. He's extremely athletic. The most athletic, the most versatile players tend to be pushed back to linebacker versus defensive line, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him flying around the field as a linebacker at Michigan.
Jalen Twyman, also a guy from H.D. Woodson. He waited not quite as long as Tariq did, but to the last minute today, he ended up going with Pitt.
Yeah, that's right. Who knows? Maybe he did. I wasn't there, but Jalen actually threw up a Twitter poll on Monday asking, hey guys, should I go to Pitt or should I go to, I'm forgetting the other school he had in mind. I think it was Miami? I want to say, no, I can't remember, but he was down to two schools. He had a Twitter poll up. Pitt actually got, I think, like 69% of the vote, and that's what he went with. Hopefully he didn't base it off that, all right?
Man, that'd be the last thing I'd want to do, is base my decision off of the people on Twitter, man, because you just never know who's out there.
Hey, there's the trust your gut, folks, and then there's the trust Twitter, folks, right?
Yeah. Ask a friend, yeah.
I'd rather trust my gut.
50-50?
Yeah. Ask the audience, I should say. But Jalen Twyman's a great player, so he should do really well at Pitt. I'm glad he made a good decision.
All right, well, we'll be back. We still have our recaps and previews to get to, but first, Alex Harris stops by for his In the Paint segment. This week, it's featuring Keon Boyd. Hey guys, I'm Matt President. I'm joined by Alex Harris here on Inside the Paint. Today, we're talking about Keon Boyd, a dynamic player at H.D. Woodson.
Absolutely, yeah, and Keon has really been making some noise this year and had some really big games and bringing a lot of attention to himself. As well as his, getting his team on the map. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a few plays here that he made in a recent game, and just to show how dynamic he is, and also, kind of how he creates a presence for himself on the court. So as we go right into this first one, you've got a little bit of an isolation play here, and if you let it roll just a little bit, you're going to start to see the help defense, and pause right there. And you can see there's two of the other HD Woodson players in the corner and the top of the key. Keon's got the ball in his hands, and the help defense clearly respects him as a player, clearly respects him because they're digging in. So let's go ahead and let it play just a little bit more and pause right there. So now he starts to create that separation. He's doing a little between the legs action to get into his step back, and let's let him go ahead and step back and pop right there, stop. This is a wide open shot. Now, wide open shots are created in a lot of different ways, but when you can create it for yourself off the dribble, that's special, and that's something that college coaches are always looking at because it's even tougher to get your shot off at the next level. So this is a skill this young man is going to be able to use for a number of years.
All right, so it's a great job getting that separation, hitting that shot, but roll it back real quick. Let's take a look at where he shoots this from. So Alex, he's just inside the three-point line. As a coach, is that a good shot or a bad shot?
Yeah, and that's a great question. You know, I mean, his heels kind of are on the three-point line there, you know, but...
All right, now it's time for our weekly rewind. As promised, we're going to get to it. National Signing Day, though, taking priority on this exciting Wednesday. But, Nick, we're going to start with last night. And a really good game, much anticipated, DeMatha and Paul VI, and really a lot changing in the top 5 of the Washington Post rankings these days.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of criticism about that, but it's a topsy-turvy league, as the WCAC always is, best league in the area. Paul VI going down immediately after we ranked them number 1, making us look foolish. But, you know, these two teams are very evenly matched. There's very little separation between any of those top 5 teams, Rock Creek Christian included. Last night, DeMatha and Paul VI. I think DeMatha pretty much never trailed this one, although it was always close. Just a real heavyweight matchup here. Aaron Thompson going head-to-head with Ryan Allen, DJ Harvey. So this was a game our colleague Jacob Bogage got out to, and I wish I had covered it because it's a titanic matchup every time these two teams take the floor.
You mentioned the heavyweight DJ Harvey, 28 points, 14 of 16 from the free throw line, and that's always a difference maker.
He's getting to the basket. You know, sometimes DJ can be a little passive and settle for that J when he can take it to the hole. I mean, he's certainly capable of taking it to the rim anytime he wants to. So when you see him taking 14 free throws like that, it's indicative of his aggressive play, which is really how DeMatha thrives, because even if he misses, they've got bigs who can clean up around the basket. So DeMatha, very dangerous when they're firing on all cylinders. They got a 6'11" dude, they got a 7-foot dude, they got some big guys under there.
So are they the new number 1?
Potentially. You know what? I think Rock Creek Christian right now is our de facto number 1.
Okay.
They're 18-0. They very good argument to rank them number 1 last week. We simply put Paul VI ahead of them because of the strength of schedule, and they were coming off 12 straight wins. Very controversial, but you could flip it either way. The difference between 1 and 2 is almost nil.
Well, we'll get to them in a minute, but first I'm going to talk to Brenton about St. Stephen's, St. Agnes. They were victorious last night over Episcopal. What was the key in that one?
Right, well, these two teams are basically 1 mile apart from each other. They're big-time rivals, and the game before that these two teams met went into triple overtime with St. Stephen's, St. Agnes coming out on top. But in this one, not quite the case. They got it done in the regular time, and Charles Thompson take one from Shaq. It's like barbecue chicken when he gets down there in the post, baby. He's just absolutely amazing, and he led the team with 16 points. And Miles Lewis had a really big night for St. Stephen's, St. Agnes as well. He pitched in with 13 points, but defensively, the big thing was they were able to hold Episcopal's leading scorer, George Mwanda Kalema. Hopefully I got that right. To just 4 points in the game, and before this he came in averaging over 20. So that was a huge, huge thing for St. Stephen's, St. Agnes in this one. And as a result, Xavier Johnson had actually 30 points for Episcopal. But in a game like this, you need more than one player to really just get it going in order to be able to come out on top, especially against two teams that are as good as this. And in the end, Episcopal just didn't have enough firepower, so St. Stephen's, St. Agnes was able to pull out this.
Johnson got 30, the rest of the team, though, 23. So to go to your point about the lack of that supporting cast. Now, it's time for our weekly previews. Already that time, we're smushing them together again to compensate for signing day. So we're going to get right into it. Rock Creek Christian, who you just mentioned, Nick, taking on Riverdale Baptist.
That's right. We got another really good matchup. This is actually the third time these two teams have played. Rock Creek Christian undefeated 18-0. Riverdale Baptist has played probably the most games in the area. I think they've almost already played close to 30 games.
They're like 22-3, I think.
Exactly. So their travel schedule is ridiculous. At one point, they went an entire month without playing a home game. They're traveling out to California. They're playing teams from Texas. They're playing teams from Florida. So that team has got a lot of mileage under its belt. But these two teams, Rock Creek Christian won the first 2 games, both tight battles. It's really tough to beat a team for the 3rd time in any sport. So expect another close one between these two.
You almost went there.
Prediction?
Close one.
I don't know, man.
So
I
a lot of miles. Is that jet lag or is that experience
no.
ready to take down the undefeated?
I don't think the mileage has anything to do with it at this point. I think they got that further enough out of the way. But Rock Creek Christian's probably too much. 6'9", Jermaine Harris, the junior, who's getting a ton of college offers, is a tremendous player. Really tough to stop. The O'Connell sophomore transfer guard, Sharif Kenny, another great one for Rock Creek Christian. But Deion Hammond on the other side, he's closing in on 1,000 points for his career. I think he might have just passed that mark, actually. He's having a fantastic season, dropped 32 points the other night. So Deion Hammond going against Sharif Kenny, it's a great backcourt battle. And then Jermaine Harris inside, he can sometimes step out and surprise you with the 3. So should be another run and gun game between those two.
You see Harris there and what he did against Capital Christian. One more game to get to, Brenton. Battlefield and Osborne, a really evenly matched game on paper. Both teams 12-7 on the year.
Right, like you said, both of these teams have identical 12-7 records. And in one of these games, I believe Battlefield beat Osborne 78-64 in their first matchup. So it'll be interesting to see which team can come out on top and have the better record. But Battlefield coming into this one had won 6 straight before losing to, as we mentioned before, Rock Creek Christian. And that was actually a pretty close game, surprisingly, considering it's a public school team and all that good stuff. But Battlefield has got 3 players who are averaging double-digit points in Braden Galt, who's leading the team with 17.5 points per game. Shonari Street, who's averaging close to 13.9 points per game. And then Joe Davis with 11.5 points per game. And then on the other hand, Osborne is at 12-7. Their last game, they got a road victory over West Springfield, 76-40. So definitely a huge win for them, and they've got 2 players who are averaging double digits as well. So this one should be a very close, evenly matched game, yeah.
Sounds like 2 games that are going to be really hotly contested from start to finish. But going back to that conversation, we started to talk a little bit about it. It sounds like if Rock Creek Christian wins, they are number 1. But who are the other teams kind of there in the mix? And kind of what goes into these decisions? We've talked about Paul VI, we've talked about DeMatha, Gonzaga, a really good resume as well. How do you weigh these different teams?
It's difficult. We have some pretty intense debate every week between the 5 or 6 guys on staff, just kind of bantering back and forth about it. But strength of schedule is a big thing, you know. But I think Rock Creek, like I said before, they're right there. They could very well be our new number 1. Gonzaga is there as well. I mean, the thing about the WCAC is you've got Gonzaga has beaten Paul VI has beaten Gonzaga, or maybe it was the other way around. I'm getting confused. The point is they all beat each other. It's very hard to rank these teams, but a lot of factors go into it. You know, it's just every week you could put any of those 5 teams in the 1 spot, and it would be a fair choice. So
yeah, I've got a question. So, like, when you guys are going through this, is there any favoritism, like, going towards, like, the WCAC just because of how strong that conference is?
I think there is. I think there might be a little bit too much. That's definitely something we've discussed before, and I think it's justified because the WCAC is the best team, best league probably in the country. But at the same time, we can't be just ignoring some of these public schools that are really coming on strong. Sure, Rock Creek Christian doesn't have as big a name as, Gonzaga or DeMatha, but just look at their team. They've got firepower at every position. They're undefeated, 18-0. So we're definitely starting to look at it more evenly. Although I do still think that the WCAC is the best league in the country. So.
Well, it's certainly tough to argue with that. Talent in the WCAC, no question. We talked about the hotbed in football. The WCAC certainly has that in basketball. A really exciting show today, National Signing Day. Nick, Brenton, thanks so much for joining me.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Congrats to all of you out there who committed. Really exciting time around the NCAA and having all these players from the DMV moving on to the next level. Until next week, I'm your host, Matt Present. This has been the Prep Zone.